Welcome to Faith in 5, a weekly video devotional designed to discuss practical spiritual concepts in 5 minutes or less. I'm your host, Mark Vandella. I had the opportunity to attend Donald Miller's Storyline Conference, and if you have a chance, I highly recommend it. If you have a chance to go, it's usually in 3 places throughout the year, and you can check it out online. But it's a phenomenal deal. It's a conference where he brings together a number of great speakers and really tries to help us come alive in our faith, come alive in what we do to live out what God's given us to do. And uniquely, he stepped on stage the first day and kind of set the foundation for it. And it's a room full of church-type people, right? Church workers, pastors. It's actually hosted, the one I went to was hosted at a church. It was at Willow Creek in Chicago. And he walked on stage and he said, the first thing I think we need to realize and come to grips with is that God doesn't have a specific plan for your life. And you could almost hear everybody gasp and look around like, did he just say what I think? And then after everybody gathered their chins up off the floor, he went on to explain, you know what, that's just, my experience is that. And when I talk to more and more people, that's also their experience. And then when I go back to the Bible and I read it, I realize that only a handful of the major players in the Bible had moments where God specifically said, you will do this. Right? He definitely showed up to Mary and Joseph and said, you will have a baby and you will name him Jesus. He showed up in front of Moses in a burning bush and said, this is what I want you to do. This is what you will do next. He spoke to people through donkeys and angels and things like that. But the majority of people, it wasn't that way. God showed up along the way. He gave them gifts and gave them a path. And I know a lot of people will disagree with that, and a lot of people use Jeremiah 29, where it says, I have the plans, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper and give you wealth and abundance. But that's really written about the state, the people, like the whole land of Israel. And I still think that Donald Miller's statement doesn't necessarily contradict that for our own lives. God wants us to prosper. He wants us. He knows that he has a grand plan. The problem is oftentimes we don't experience richness in life because we're waiting for God to give us the recipe. There's not a perfect recipe. See, Paul in 1 Corinthians 12, he starts talking to the people of Corinth and he says, what I want to talk to you today about is I want to talk to you about the ways, the various ways, right? The variety of ways that God's Spirit gets worked into your life. He goes on, he picks up in chapter 4, or in verse 4, he says, chapter 12, verse 4, he says, the gifts, God's gifts are handed out in a variety of ways to a variety of people. And just realize that there's an underlying foundation that it all points back to God, but he disseminates that so that you can then go live that out in various ways. He says that God's ministries, his plans, the things he wants to accomplish get carried out in a variety of ways based on these variety of gifts that get spread out. God's power is experienced in a variety of ways through different people, through different things. See, he finishes by saying each person is given something to do that shows who God is. See, it's much more on us. Donald Miller's whole point of the Storyline Conference is that we're co-authors. And I admit, and Don admits that I'd much rather have it that way. I'd rather be able to write this story and be able to put my name on it right alongside God's and give glory and honor and point to God that it's all of him. But I want it to be aligned with my passions and my goals and my dreams. Because ultimately, as Paul says, those things, those passions, those goals, and those dreams were put inside of us by God. Those gifts. I don't know what your gifts are, what your skills are, what your talents are, but I'm afraid that a number of us are kind of droning through life. We call ourselves Christians. We say we're Christ followers, and yet we're kind of dull. See, there's a song by Mumford and Sons called Awake My Soul. And I think a number of us are asking, we're begging and pleading with God to awake our souls. And see, they say in that song, where you invest your love, where you invest your life, you invest your love. And I think if a number of us would get out there, if more of us would get out there and live out our passions and dreams and goals, God will meet us along the way. He'll steer the ship. He'll open doors where they need to be open. He'll close them where they need to be closed. But we don't need to wait for that perfect plan and that perfect recipe to do that. At the end of the song, they say, you were meant to meet your maker, and I fully believe that. Oftentimes, we wait until death, and we use that as a term that says, yeah, he or she went to meet their maker. But why wait? My friends, today, if you learn anything or this week, apply this. Look for ways to invest your love, your skills, your passion, your life, and have God meet you on the way. It's a gift that God asks us to be co-authors. So let's get busy writing a story worth telling. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to follow us each week, click here to subscribe. And if you want to take it a little bit further, click here for discussion materials.